Okay, I want to call everybody together now. I've got a louder voice than our very kind coordinator. It's just because we have such an amazing panel, and I don't want to miss any time with it. And we have such an incredibly big, wonderful panel, and a real group of I'm really, really excited about this. So, Jessica, do you need to say anything opening up? So it is a pleasure and a privilege and an honor to be here. My name is Naomi André. I was on an earlier panel. I'm a professor here, and I'm an opera scholar, and I look at a lot with gender and race and cultural theory around opera. I'm going to say just a couple of words here, and then we actually have, as you can see, a group of 10 people, which is pretty amazing. We had asked a couple of the singers if they would be willing to say some words about Porgy, and so generously they all agreed. So we're thrilled. I have the awful job of being a timekeeper. How we're going to organize this, I'm going to say a couple of words just to set the scene, and then we're going to start from the far end with Chauncey oh dear, he's looking at me like, really? Sorry, no, Chauncey is in the middle, sorry. Norman. Sorry, Norman. I have been singing back, like, behind the scenes in the choir, so I know them all by their character names, and forgive me if I just might go into that, but that'll help you realize who they're singing tomorrow night. So it is a real pleasure to be here. We have until, I'm thinking, a little after 5, and then there's the Kaleidoscope concert, which is happening afterwards. So we do have a little bit of wiggle room based on people's availability. Hearing singers speak is a pleasure. Of course, we know it's just, a utopian wonder when singers sing. And I can tell you this is definitely going to be pretty amazing tomorrow night, because I've been sitting through rehearsals and singing in rehearsals in the chorus all night, or it feels like all night, all week, and this is really a dream cast. But when we get to hear singers talk, people don't often ask singers to talk that much, because it is such a Herculean effort to produce sound and sound beautiful. But I've noticed from when I teach singers, when I was up at the School of Music, Theater, and Dance, and then in my classes, there's probably nothing more exciting than to hear singers talk about what they're doing on stage. I want to mention briefly 3 sort of background ideas, publications, things out there if you want to look into this more for some of the themes that might get us rolling. The first is, I want to give a shout out to Gwen Kuhner-Brown's article called Performers in Catfish Row, which comes from a collection, Blackness in Opera, which I edited in 2012. But Gwen wrote about how the performers in the first Porgy and Bess and the Eva Jesse chorale were actually part collaborators and weren't just given notes to read, but Gershwin listened to them, and the stage and the singing was very much influenced by what they did, their bodies, their experiences, and how they sang these characters and made them come to life. I also and so that's a wonderful article that talks about what's at stake, both with Porgy and Bess and how performers were part of this, and different productions going all the way up to the 1985 production by the Metropolitan Opera. I also want to give a shout out to James Standifer, who's an emeritus professor here, the School of Music and the Music Education program. And at the turn of the century, into late 1990s and 2000, he made a documentary on Porgy and Bess, taking advantage of the wonderful materials here from the Eva Jesse collection and doing wonderful interviews. If you haven't seen this documentary, I urge you to. They're beautiful scenes with Anne Brown and Todd Duncan and many other people who sang these roles. And it was near the end of their life, and so it's really just beautiful footage there. in those interviews, what Standifer's documentary shows us, as well as Wallace Cheatham, who has a book that talks about talking to Black performers, singing different opera roles, and particularly with Porgy and Bess. And so one of the things in the background, and I mentioned this very briefly earlier, that while in the Gershwin family and George Gershwin's desires is to have Black singers sing these roles, particularly when they're being performed. A very unfortunate thing is that they sing it at opera houses, and then there's this revolving door where singers do not end up getting cast as Tosca and Aida and Boccanegra and Rodolfo and all the other roles that their voices can and should be doing. So I'm saying this publicly as a plea to not just the opera directors out there, but to all of us. And to say, please, we want to see these singers and hear their voices more on stage. We need these bodies on stage because they're doing something incredibly important. And that is basically all I'm going to say now. I'm going to be the timekeeper, and because I am mixing up names, if you could just say your name. The wonderful thing is you can read their longer bios in the program tomorrow night. But why don't we just go down? I've asked them to speak for 3 to 4 minutes. Sadly, if it gets to be too long, I might make a little sound, but that's just only to keep you guys going. I want everybody's voice in here on the panel because you're so amazing. And then we'll have time to open it up for some questions. Thank you. And so if we can start with Norman. Did I get that right? With Crown. Yeah. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Norman Garrett, and I'm performing the role of Crown here. My experience with this piece has been very interesting. It's funny you speak about, people getting stuck on the catfish row and like not being able to get out of there and stuff like that. Once you do it once, all the companies want you to do it, and it's a double-edged sword. It's like, you want to do it, you want to get in with these companies, but you have to look on the other side as like, okay, are these companies going to consider me for, these other roles that I want to be singing? And in my experience, when these offers come up, it's always kind of with a grain of salt. It's like, okay, it's not like immediate excitement. It's like, okay, I can do that. Of course I can sing this. I've done it before. But then the other end is like, but I can also sing this other stuff, and you've heard me sing this other stuff. You've heard me sing it well, even. Why? So, it is a matter of contention for a lot of performers. The standard repertoire, in most of the major houses, you'll see a couple of chocolate drops in there. I'm just being real. Just being real. You'll see a couple of chocolate drops on the stage. But yeah, there's a lot of us out there, and it's just unfortunate, which is why this is done with a grain of salt. I don't know. It feels like you just get the feeling that, like, of course, I can sing this role. Sure, I'll take it. But it kind of, if it's a company that you know, or like a company that people who recognize you and know you, it kind of hurts a little bit. It's like, this is all you want to, consider me for. I'm offended. I mean, I'm going to take it. I'm going to take it this time. It's a good company. But, like I said, every time it comes up, it's never just like, oh, this is great. It's like, meanwhile, if it was like, Mozart, Verdi or something, it's like, yes, sign on a dotted line. So it's just kind of sad, as marvelous as this piece is, there's that stigma that comes with it, that this is all that you're going to be able to sing. And I don't know if it's as bad as it used to be. I don't know if the struggles that I'm going through, or Reggie, or Morris, Chauncey, or any of us are going through are, what people went through in the 90s, the 80s. I can't speak for them, but I can speak for myself and say, it's been pretty tough. So I can only imagine it was even tougher for them at that time. I guess that's all I have to say about this.
Thank you.
Hi. Whoa. Hello. Hello. My name is
Reginald. I don't know why this is even here. Way back there. There we go. Okay. My name is Reginald Smith Jr., or Reggie. In this production, I'm singing Jake. I've done the role of Jake before. I've also sung Lawyer Frazier, and I have covered Crown before. And I've learned Porgy just for myself. And the thing that I always find so amazing about Porgy and Bess, more than some of the other operas, is that it really is a community opera. You know, everybody is a part of it. Every role is important. You know, the Strawberry Woman can steal the show, even though it's a 4-hour night, you know. If she sings about those strawberries, you want to go to the grocery store after the show and get strawberries, you know. And so it's one of the things about Porgy is that it also makes you come together as a cast and as a family. And so I always get really excited about doing Porgy and Bess for that aspect, the music and the collegial nature of it and how everyone really comes together. But I will also say that I have had to be very careful in my own career so far because in the past 3 years I've been offered Porgy 4 times. And the role of Porgy, not Jake, not Crown, you know, Lawyer Frazier or so. And it's not that I don't want to sing the role. I would love to sing the role, but I want to get to a point in my career where it's a part of my repertoire and not all of my repertoire. And so it's been really interesting trying to navigate doing something that I really enjoy and that I really want to do, but having to make the best career choice for myself and say, no, I'm not going to do that now. Instead, I'll do a smaller role here and maybe a cover or, you know, something there. So as Norman was saying, you get a bit of the double-edged sword, but I do think that it's one of the great American masterpieces. And we are fortunate to be able to perform this work and to be able to hear it. I just wish it didn't come with some of the stigmas, because I would like to do it as well as singing Ballo in Mascara without having to worry about if I'll sing 10 Porgies and 1 count Alma Viva. So.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rehanna Thelwell, and I'll be performing the role of Mariah. And this is actually my very first Porgy and Bess, because I am actually still a student here at the University of Michigan. Thank you. I'm in my 2nd year of my specialist, and this has been such an amazing experience for me because as a student, I'm sitting alongside titans of my industry, and I've never thought that in my collegiate degree, I would have this kind of opportunity. So to have it is impactful, but I also want to branch out and do more things with my voice. I mean, I'm 26, so my voice is still growing. I have things I need to learn, and if I'm stuck in this rut of only being Mariah, then how can you ask your artists to grow? And as young artists, that's what we need to do. We need to make sure that we have the right tools to be able to put it towards whatever role we get instead of just one particular role. So that's my impact with it, and I mean, I guess I am done.
Hello, my name is Janai Brugger, and I'm singing the role of Clara. This is also, first, I'm a graduate of University of Michigan. I got my master's here from 2007 to 9, so it's nice to be back. Anytime I'm asked to come back here, it's always a pleasure. I was just here 2 weeks ago to do a recital with Martin Katz, and now back to do this, so I'm really, really thrilled and honored. It's also my first time doing Porgy and Bess in this context. I've sung little mini concert versions, never in its full context like I'm doing tomorrow night. And already I have gotten asked to do this now about 4 times this year, and I haven't even started yet. So there is that. But my path has been a little bit different. I have already started my career singing other roles, so it was kind of like with all of my friends who have been singing, there's like, you're just now doing this? And I said, yeah, I kind of missed out on doing that, and I really wanted to be honest. I wanted to be a part of something that's so important in our culture, and so I was feeling like I was missing out by having not have done or participated in this opera. So now that I'm doing it, I am also finding out, like my colleagues have stated, that I'm getting asked now, booked years down the road to do this. So I will do as many as I can, but I also keep my stuff open to other opportunities and other roles that I'm interested in. I'm not sure what else to say. It's been a great experience. I do love being on stage with these people that are seasoned Porgy and Bessers who have, this one here knows everybody's role. Everybody's role. She could probably conduct it. She knows it's amazing, but it's truly, beautiful work. The music, like Reggie was saying, it's unreal, and it's a way to give some of our culture out there and putting it on the spotlight. So I love being a part of that. And we'll see what happens from here on out. But as of right now, I've signed on for 2 more for this upcoming season. And I'll probably leave it at that for a while.
Hello, my name is Karen Slack, and I sing the role of Serena. And I have sung, only 2 productions of Porgy and Bess. I've done one in Philadelphia as a student where I sang Lily, and then a few years later came back and sang my first and last Clara, because no ma'am, I don't want that baby, no ma'am. And then I've just sung Francesca Zambello's legendary production. I've sung it 3 times, and that has afforded me 3 major debuts, Lyric Opera Chicago, Washington National, and not my debut in San Francisco because I did my young artist in San Francisco, but that's where we did the DVD of that production. And I have to say, I did not start my career singing Porgy and Bess. I started singing early Verdi, Puccini, Mozart. By me being in a major young artist program in San Francisco, I was trained to sing Strauss, Mozart, Verdi, Puccini, all those things. And when my voice started growing into big lyrical spinto is where the Serena started coming. And as my voice kept growing and growing, the Serenas kept coming and coming. And I got offered a Bess or 2, but I couldn't take it because I had another conflict. And I told my agent, well, what else do they have? Can it be packaged into something else? And oftentimes it's not the case, depending on the company, depending on the general director, depending on their vision, despite what's on my resume. I have a very good reputation for singing this role, as I sing it well. Serena and I have had a love-hate relationship, but now we're good now. We're good now, but yeah, it's been a journey. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to share the stage with great Serenas and great Besses and great legendary Porgies and great legendary Crowns. Greg Baker, who's a legendary Crown, but I got to be in his first Porgy. And I think it is the single greatest American opera. There's no other greater American opera, at least of the 20th century. Dead Man Walking would be the greatest of the 21st century. But yeah, it's the thing of where you never get to sing with your friends as much, because when you do other productions, oftentimes you're the only Black singer. It's a miracle to have 3. If you have 3, Morris did a magic flute in Houston, and it was like 3 Black people on the stage. It was like historic.
Yeah, that would be magazine, right?
Yeah, exactly. It became a big deal. I mean, I love Porgy, but and it has put people through college. Lots of, often not, now you can't make the money you used to make. There was a time where the singers of the generation before us bought houses with Porgy and Bess, put their kids through college with Porgy and Bess, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Nowadays, that's not the case. And you don't want it to be the case, You don't want to just be on Catfish Row, but it's a tough thing. And the next part about that, and I will wrap it up after this, is that you have to have agents and managers who have the pull and have the force to be able to say, no, he or she should be singing these roles, these principal roles in these houses. Unfortunately, the large percentage of African American singers don't even have agents. You can look on the rosters and see that. That's easy, go on YouTube. So that even knocks 85% of us even out of the running to even be considered. You know, so I told my agent, what's the money? And then, you know, you don't want to sing just for the money, but I asked them, what are they offering me? If they're not going to offer me other roles, how much are they going to offer me? So, you know, anyway, that's my experience.
Hello, my name is Chauncey Packer. I sing Sport and Life. I've also sung Mingo, Robbins, Crabman, Daddy Peter, pretty much all the tenor roles and ensemble.
And you sang Bess in rehearsal.
Here's strawberry. You know, but I love the score. I love this piece. I love that it is one of the main themes of the piece is community. It not only every time I've done this piece, I've done mostly concert semi-stage versions of it, but every time I do this piece, it always brings the community together. And it always gives me a new community to add to the family. Also, it gave me, as a Black opera singer, it gave me my great family of network of Black singers that, as a little Alabama boy in an opera chorus, a volunteer chorus there, I didn't have this strong of a support as an opera singer and a Black opera singer in the world. So it's afforded me that, first of all, which has increased my career with the networking, with the support when I really get discouraged. My family's here for me. I had a white tenor friend of mine say to me, he said, you're really, really lucky. You have a piece that will take you all over the world, and that I have to get a temp job this summer, but you're in Europe somewhere singing Porgy. So when I thought about it, and I hear certain singers say, well, it's a crutch and it'll put you in it's a sword. The sword has been mostly sweet for me. Again, I've gotten to see the world, and I've gotten to be able to hone this role of Sport and Life over and over and over again. I remember working with a coach, John Keane, when I was preparing Rodolfo for La Bohème. And I kept making this mistake, and I wanted to sing this phrase without a breath. And he said, okay, we tried it. We coached it that way. It's not going to happen this time. Hopefully on your 20th production of Bohème, you will have it by then. But he's like, relax, breathe, breathe there. And he said, I don't know what soprano said this, but by her 20th production of Macbeth or whatever, she finally knew the role. I understand that now with Sport and Life. I've been on tours. I'm in tour with this man all over Europe and in Japan and all over, to where you have an 8-show week. I've also been out with the Broadway version of the show, which was a beautiful and wonderful experience. That's a little different from the opera. So again, it was a great experience to afford me. Also to know that with that production, the musical, I digress, but in a minute, but the musical informed me, and those experiences informed me on a whole different way. In the musical, we got to do it in Washington National Theater, where that theater was segregated. And because on the first tour of Porgy and Bess, with Todd Duncan and Ann Brown, that cast protested and they struck. They were on a strike because they said they wouldn't go on unless the audience would be integrated. So they stopped that and they changed the rules for that show and that tour, and then it went back. But I often think that's the DNA that we're a part of. So again, these different experiences inform my career on a whole nother level and so complexly that it's so enriching. But now I can't remember where I was going to digress to. So much to say, but this piece has just afforded me the opportunity to hone a role and an opera and study it every time, hear it and study it, study the score. I'm always amazed every time I hear the orchestra. It's so brilliant, the orchestral arrangement of it. It's just or the setting of the orchestra, there's always something new that I hear. There's always something new, an inflection from a different colleague singing a role that I hadn't heard before. So again, it's afforded me this opportunity to hone and hone and hone to where I hope I have that experience with all the roles that I do. And I think it's a great piece. It's not hurt me so far. Again, like any other opera singer, you have to be conscious of what you do. I've also turned down Cheniers and Don Jose's because I wasn't ready to sing them at the time. I have to be careful just as much with Sport and Life. Like, okay, if I've worked in this company before and you want to bring me back to sing Sport and Life at a lesser fee, then I have to say no, or agree what kind of agreement I want to agree on. But again, as I always tell that to young singers, as you are your own artist, you are your own person, own it. And it's hard for singers sometimes because we're a little pawn and a variable in so much of the business of it all. But we own this, and we own the roles. So it's been more of a benefit for me than a cutting sword, this role.
My name is Talise Trevigne, and I am singing the role of Bess. I had my first experience this past summer, along with Norman, at the Glimmerglass Festival with Francesca Zambello. Strangely, my story is a little different, similar to Janai. I actually couldn't get onto Catfish Row. I had tried for years, whenever there was an audition, and I knew it was there, because my first teacher was Adele Addison, so I grew up around Betty Allen, Adele Addison, Mr. George Shirley, around some of the greats who've instilled in me what artistry is. I came to this as a dancer who tore her ACL, so I was never intending to be a singer at all. And I got into Manhattan School mostly because I lied about how to get to New York. I just wanted to get out of California. That's another story. So, and just from my own, I mean, I know the history of this piece. You know, I was born in New Orleans, raised in California, so it's in me anyway. But my approach has never been, my perception of this piece was never ever negative anyway. So I guess I always came to it. I was actually trying to get into Catfish Row. I could never get, I mean, they were casting for Porgy and Bess, and they'd say, oh, we'd like to hear her for Gilda. And I was like, what? What? So, I mean, and then I just sort of stepped away from, I mean, I am fortunate, and it is not lost on me that I stand on the shoulders of many beautiful African-American artists, and that's why I do have the privilege of being able to sing Butterfly and Pamina and Gilda and all the other roles that I've been able to sing. But I did feel left out because this was, you know, again, my family's from New Orleans. Jazz was just in my home. I mean, I inherited my grandfather's collection of 1,800 vinyl CDs, some which are illegal. But, you know, and so it was, I did say vinyl CDs. See, that's, sorry, whatever. Leave me alone. So, when I did finally get offered this opportunity to sing it, I was told, you know, most people don't think you can do this. Anybody who knows me knows not to challenge me. So, I mean, and not only that, but I always play the character that's in a bed, sick, dying. She sings a high note. And, you know what I mean? And not saying that I'm not, do you know, I love Violetta. I love Mimi. But I started as a dancer, and I love the idea of community because this is just what is natural to me. This is what I've always grown up with. I mean, my Christmases and holidays, there were no less than 35 people in the house passing through all the time. It was just, you know, there was always the uncle that you didn't really like, but you were like, whatever, feed him anyway. And I mean, this just felt so familiar. So to not be able to have the gift that I've been blessed with in an experience that feels so naturally familiar to me was kind of gut-wrenching. And I'm not going to dismiss other people's experiences because I do think that they're valid. Someone had asked me, they said, well, in the 60s, African-American singers were telling other singers not to sing this at all. And I said, well, that was the 60s, and given what was going on, one could understand that situation and why one would choose to not do that. Fortunately, sitting here amongst my colleagues who have had amazing and continue to have amazing careers, we bring another validity to the piece. And I think it's time for this generation to take it into what I think it was intended to be initially. I don't feel offended by the language. It's actually based on an actual language, which is Gullah. And it was a man's, in my opinion, attempt to be reverential to what he saw and witnessed and the beautiful colors that come from that. I mean, being Creole, there's really not any IPA for patois. So, you do the best that you can and to explain all the different rules and things like that, or lack of rules. So my way of carrying forward in this opera, because I did do one and I was immediately offered 6 others within 2 seasons, and I have chosen to claim that by my interest is who's in my cast. Who's Porgy, who's Serena? Because I think that this generation of singers is putting quite a high standard on this piece. I mean, even studying the score, I'm so thrilled that I was able to do it in Glimmerglass and spend so much extensive time, because people underestimate the difficulty of this score. They come in and they think, oh, I got plenty of nothing. That has nothing to do with what this opera is about. And that's just on the page. And then you take the interpersonal relationships and what brings it to life and what makes everyone just so drawn to this opera is difficult to pull off. I mean, we were talking about the card scene alone, which is just one portion of the opera. That takes a good 1/4 of your rehearsal period to get it right. Because if you look the wrong way for half a second, you've messed up the whole thing. So I have been blessed to be able to learn so much about the piece and to bring my own little piece of what it means to be Bess or in this community, and amongst the highest caliber of singers. And I have no doubt that I will pick and choose my Besses that I sing, and it is not, I choose to make it not because that's what someone wants to offer me, but I claim it back by saying, this is what I choose to give you amongst this cast. And that's my experience with the piece.
Hello. I'm Morris Robinson, and I'm like the oldest guy up here. And this is only my, second oldest guy up here. So, 1999 was 19 years ago. I decided to study opera. And I started singing professionally almost immediately. And from the moment anyone ever heard my voice to say hello, the first thing, invariably, a Caucasian person would say to me is, I bet you'd make a great Porgy. I'd love to hear you sing Old Man River. So, for 17 years, I never sang Porgy or Old Man River. All right? I built my career on singing German and Italian repertoire at every house that would hire me to do so. And I've been blessed enough to do it at the Metropolitan Opera, San Francisco, Chicago, all the A houses in this country, every A-level orchestra. I've done it for the better part of 17 years straight before I took on one black role. Then I decided to sing Joe, Old Man River, in Chicago. I immediately was offered every last production of that after that one performance. And I waited and waited and waited. So I survived that. I got more offers at the Met. I sang Ferrando and Trovatore, sang Aida, sang, Zalame, all this stuff. And then this little company in Italy called me up and said, we want you to sing Porgy, finally. And I said, little company. This company named La Scala in Italy asked me to come sing it.
Tell the people. Tell them.
Well, you're messing up my story. I had like a whole dramatic build to this and just completely pierced the hole in the balloon. And at that moment, I decided that, first, I never worried about Porgy and Bess. I always heard you should stay away from it. And because I'm a true bass, there was really no role in it for me. I mean, no real bassists sing Porgy. You have bass baritones, you have Gordon Hawkins, you have, Todd Duncan, who's a baritone. You have all these guys that had this nice mellow thing, and I was always the king, the god, the father, the priest, the devil, this guy. And, but when it came to me from this little company in Italy, I thought, maybe just take a look at this thing. I never even went to a show. I went to one show. I didn't want to be seen around it. I'm being real here. I'm not being an elitist. I'm being real here. I didn't want to be seen around it. I didn't want it to enter my brain. I supported my friends, but I was blessed not to be able to have to just live on this. You talk about people putting their kids through college and buying a house. I bought my house off Zerostro. I bought my mother's first mink coat off Zerostro at the Met. It took a lot for me to go look at this role and say, okay, here's the tessitura, blah, blah, blah. I've been singing all these years. Now I have the technique. I can actually sing an F sharp. Okay, then, all this stuff. So finally I decided to do it. And then I got 7 offers to do it. Like immediately. Have you not heard me sing Zaccaria at Los Angeles with Placido Domingo? Everyone wants me to sing Porgy now. So the stigma is real. Now what makes it easier, what Norman said, what makes it better nowadays is because people like Karen, Morris, Reggie, what's your name again? Talise. You wait, we've waited until we've legitimized ourselves for so long in other repertoire that when you add yourself to this, now all of a sudden, they look at it differently. It's not just a bunch of black folks that sing this music that must be really easy because they got rhythm and can clap. Because it's not just that. It does go wrong because it's not an easy score. But the point is, once you have legitimized yourself as an artist, then you can take that gamble and that risk, and it changes, I think, the optics at least of what the score, what the story is. So I'm very happy to be on Catfish Row. I never get to sing with brothers and sisters except for that Houston production of and then last year at the Met, we had 3 blacks in principals. It was Magic Flute. It just happened to be Magic Flute. And that was at the Metropolitan Opera. And then Eric and I did that thing in Philadelphia, the Don Carlo, which made AP, So the rarity of me getting a chance to sing with people that look like me is so, and I enjoy it because I'm like the downest black person in opera. But, self-proclaimed, obviously. Self-proclaimed. But I enjoy the camaraderie, I enjoy the community, I enjoy the spirit, I enjoy listening to the talent level on this stage, being a part of it. And I've sung with Janai at the Met. We've done Magic Flute, right? We've done Magic Flute in Chicago. You and I did some things in Washington. Chauncey and I were in Italy together. So we're not just an outcast cast of individuals that only do this. And I'm happy that this is now what the new turn is, and I think that is hopefully raising the level of legitimacy, raising the level of acceptance. This score is the hardest score I've done. I've done Strauss, I've done Stravinsky. This is incredibly hard. You cannot miss one beat. If you're not, that card scene, the dice scene, if one person misses a line, it's like a complete wreck.
There's never a moment in the opera, right, where you can just go like,
well, you only feel comfortable when everybody knows it exactly right.
Yes.
When you're with a bunch of veterans, I just so happen to be lucky to have a lot of guys in my cast the first time I did that knew it way better than I did. So I was able to kind of flow. And Chauncey, if I missed a line, Chauncey would sing it for me. But I didn't miss a line. Well, one more thing. I took it very seriously when I did it because I did not want to be a failure because so many people did this before me that were great. And the level of expectation is so high. And I too was told, you're never gonna be able to do this role. You don't have the high notes for this. You don't have the tessitura for it. You don't have the characteristics, because I'm always the dad, I defend that by saying, and this is a whole different discussion, but Porgy, I think, is the strongest character in the show. Everybody respects him. Everybody looks up to him. They won't even take her money unless it came from me. It's, it's real. And the only reason I don't kill Crown earlier is because my legs don't work,
Because he can't.
Because my legs don't work. There's no punk in Porgy. So anyway, that's a whole different discussion. But
I feel like I should say something.
all right. Anyway, I've said enough. We'd like to open up for discussion, but I'm very happy to be part of Catfish role. I take it with pride. I never took this role lightly. Once I got it, I went and learned it from John DeMaine. I learned from Gordon. I learned it from Donnie Ray Albert. I went to all the greats. I put it in my calendar. I was singing in Dallas, at Dallas Opera, went to Donnie Ray's house every week. When I got done with that, I flew up and rented a cabin in Glimmerglass because John was conducting up there, learned from him. I really took it seriously, and I think that, people need to understand that this thing is really, really serious to us. We take it seriously. It's serious music, and it needs to be heard. It needs to be respected. So.
Hi, I am the oldest person on the panel, by far. Some of you were in here in the audience when I was on the earlier panel, so you know a little bit about what I've done. But I too had an opportunity to do Porgy and Bess, but it took me a while to get there too. They wouldn't let me on Catfish Row at first either. And I'm from Charleston, or from Somerville, and they still wouldn't let me on Catfish Row. So I sang the duet, Best You Is My Woman Now, as a high school senior. And then I was going to go to college to be a clinical psychologist. I saw my first opera at Aida at Bob Jones University, and those of you who know Bob Jones know that that's kind of rare that I would be there watching an opera. But yeah, not selling popcorn. So I changed my major from clinical psychology to music because somebody said, oh, you could do that. And then I went to grad school and finished my degree in voice performance, got my master's in voice performance, and decided I need a break from school. So I went to Europe to be in a program at the Zurich Opera. And one of the things I had to do there was to be crowned in a Porgy and Bess production. And I was scared out of my wits because I didn't think I could handle it vocally, but it was one of the things that got me to Europe. A man by the name of Simon Estes was in that cast, and he mentored me and he helped me understand what the piece was about, what singing it was about. And so that's how I got involved in it. After I did that production, though, they wouldn't let me on Catfish Row for 10 or 12 years. And during that time, I sang at the Hamburg State Opera and sang at the Zurich Opera and did a lot of other things in Europe. And I did get the opportunity to do, and I was a member of a house, so I got the opportunity to do 17 Bohèmes. I was Marcello, and I got a chance to do that 17 times. So you do get to learn the role. You do get to learn how you can sing, how you get through something. I sang 17 performances of Germont and Traviata. I sang 12 performances of The Father and Louisa Miller, and knew after the first one that I shouldn't be singing it, but I had to do 11 more. So there are a lot of things that you learn. But when I finally did get a chance to be on Catfish Row on a regular basis, it was an amazing story for me. And like all of them, I respect the opera and respect what it stands for. And I said some of those things earlier, and I won't repeat them now. The one thing I would like to say is that Simon told me a story about his career and one of the things that he did. And he was lucky in two ways. One is that he found the director of an opera company who believed in him as a singer and as a man. And he was strong enough to say this to that man: I will sing Porgy in your production, but I won't do it unless you give me something else. Now that was incredibly brave. It would be incredibly brave now, and we're talking 25 years ago, 30 years ago. So this man was the director of the Opera House in Zurich, and he said, well, I'll give you that. And he sang Flying Dutchman there, and because he sang Flying Dutchman in Zurich, he ended up being the first African-American male to sing at Bayreuth. And that Flying Dutchman is on video now, and it's a great role. So it took an impresario who believed in him. And since most impresarios are white, we need to have more impresarios who are willing to do that. And until we have more impresarios who are willing to do that, we're going to have this problem. And we need to have impresarios that look like us. That's another thing that we need to figure out how we're going to do. And the last quick thing I want to say is, this opera, as they have said, this opera is not easy. There's nothing easy about Porgy and Bess. Nothing. Musically, dramatically, vocally. You can't sing this opera if you can't sing. You have to be able to be grounded in great classical technique to sing this opera, to get through it, or else you're not going to. And people think of it, and they see African Americans up there doing it, and so they think, well, it must be easy. And I think that's part of the issue. They think it must be easy. And we have to remember, and I think that everybody up here has sung something classical. So you have to remember that it's not easy. So, thank you. That's all I have to say for now.
Oh my goodness. That was amazing. Thank you so much. What I'd like to do is open this up for questions, but I also would like the incredible panelists to keep voicing you and give you the opportunity to speak when you need to. So feel free if there's something else, because this really is a community. I have found that so much singing in the choir, standing behind all of you, feeling, oh my goodness. So I want you to feel like you can talk to each other, and I want the audience to sort of join the community as much as you are willing, able to do. Questions? Oh, Mark. Oh, sorry. Forgive me.
Comment, I've had a wonderful time just listening to you all here, and you haven't started to sing yet. So, talking about careers, I just want to say onward, upward.
So I'm going to ask a dangerous question in case, if your answer is not really. But I wonder what you think of the new scores that we've put together, and if it's been any different from the previous ones. I mean, obviously we're not trying to do anything revolutionary. We haven't found any new music, but I wonder what you thought. 2 new measures, according to Wayne.
My music didn't change. There was a word or two that was different, but they opened up the cuts. So I'm doing music now that I didn't do before. Some of it I learned because Donnie Ray made me learn it. The other part, he says, we're never going to do that part, and now we're doing it. So, and I actually screwed that part up last night. Because I walked on stage before, I was like, I'm going to do it from memory, I know this. And I got up there, I was like, so, but that's the only difference. Only a few word choice differences, and maybe a note or two, I think, that harmonically didn't make sense to me at first, and then Kevin proved to me that it did, so I had to sing it. That was about it.
Well, I was going to say about the score.
It's not the mic.
For me, I don't have, Jake is not the biggest of the roles in Porgy and Bess, which is great. Act 2, scene 3, I go off to take that one long trip out on the ocean, and then I'm done. Boom. But by doing this, the complete version, the new critical edition, again, opening up cuts, there are parts that I'd never even heard that as I was going through, I thought, this can't be in the old score. And I went back to the old score, and I was like, It's been there the whole time. Also, by doing the critical edition, there are parts that I've even, I know that I've done the role before, and I know I sang them incorrectly, but I thought, oh, this is a new edition. Oh, these notes must be different. And I thought, those notes have been the same the whole time. So it's forced me to actually learn all the right notes, so I'm okay with that. Thank you.
I enjoy that, again, there's more of the exposition there, because I think with a lot of the new traditions of cutting it, you lose all that exposition there that, again, is very important with one of the main things being community. We need to see this community, and we need to be introduced to what's going on. So I enjoyed that. Some of the tempi are, for me, I think when they did the Broadway musical version, and the Gershwins sort of sought that out to make another vehicle for the piece, and again, a different vehicle, not the same vehicle, but a different vehicle, so it can be quote unquote approachable by today's audience. Again, some of the tempis are a little faster and brisk and concise and what have you. I do love that the opera is grand opera, and that we've come to that for Porgy and Bess, because it's needed. It is a grand opera. But I think some of the tempi markings that were longer and sort of lacquered, I think could be a little bit more upbeat, a little move along. It's just sort of the thing one of my coaches explained rubato to me. It's like, if you rob somewhere, you got to give it back somewhere. So it's like, you can take it away here, but there has to be a reason why it's slow here and that it needs to move on some places. I really enjoy hearing some of the notes that we've gotten used to hearing in today that may be a little different in some of the score. So I enjoy that. Some of the instrumental doubling of the voices, I don't think work today. Some of it, but I really enjoy this edition. I'm gonna get those half notes, I promise you. Ah.
And they took my footnote saying, you don't have to play this piano.
And
I agree.
I wonder if again, sometimes if with some of the characterizations, if it was to reinforce whoever's on stage. I mean, we see that with composers like, say, Verdi with a soprano, and he wrote this for this specific soprano. And I wonder if some of that doubling was to strengthen, the sound of whoever was playing it at the time.
I think he scored it before he knew
All the characters.
Actually, voice range. Remember your low G? Of course, you remember your low G.
Yes, sir.
He at the beginning, he thought he was going to get Paul Robeson.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and he would never in a million years have gotten Paul Robeson, because Paul Robeson would have hated the show. And actually, my edition has that changed to a B sharp, because that was what Todd Duncan. All the A's, of course, Todd Duncan agreed.
I noticed
But
how you really
you got the G.
Yeah.
Use the G.
Yeah. It starts slow and gets higher, and I knew that was because it started with Paul Robeson in mind.
Higher, Todd
So
Duncan. Yeah.
it makes it harder for a guy like me at the end of the night.
I will apologize.
It's not your fault.
We have a question over here.
Hi. First of all, I want to tell you from the first piano piece I ever had as a kid was Summertime. And from that day on, I thought Porgy and Bess, I do think Porgy and Bess is drop dead gorgeous. I mean, so if I had two desert island operas that I wanted, I would take The Marriage of Figaro and Porgy and Bess. So the question I have is for Sport and Life, and I know you're aware that the first Sport and Life was actually a dancer, John Bubbles, the inventor of rhythm tap, and Gershwin specifically wanted him, And that, as far as I understand, Gershwin really loved his dancing. I read somewhere, although Richard Crawford probably knows if this is true or not, that Gershwin called him the Toscanini of tap. That it was that level of it. Is there any dance that remains in that part, or can it be done straight? What do you...
It's definitely when I've done, dance is always encouraged for the role. I know when I've done stage productions of it, when there is a budget, there's a choreographer there. If there's not a budget, they often look to me to choreograph something.
Yeah, go for it.
And I also, again, I always say, thinking about the role, again, and knowing that Gershwin, this great lover of vaudeville and a John Bubble type, you know, and a Cab Calloway and like these guys were essentially an archetype for the role. So again, that role requires dancing. And when I started to first audition for it, I was a bigger guy, and I was often critiqued that I sing it too much, and that I'm too big and I can't move. So when I first started doing it, I can move. It's like, oh, you're a big guy that can move. But again, I think like any other role that I would do, I have to be true to the studying of all the role. So the score, the history of the part, what the composer and arranger meant for this type to be. So I definitely try to do my homework with it. Every time I'm doing it, even if they shift the production 10 years or 10 to 20 years when they play it, I go and I study the dance of that time. You know, if they take it back a little bit further, I've done productions where they've done they want to set it in 1920, which some things don't play so well, but again, if we're gonna play it here, let me be true to the dances here. And it's the music of this Sporting Life, I always say, it's just great material. Yeah. It's simply great material. It's all danceable. It's all written. It's all there. You know, it's like a Puccini. It's the drama's written in the music. It's there. So I can't imagine someone would do the role and not dance. You know, or even if I choose to sing it more than it's sometimes perceived that it should be sung, because again, I also think it is. And I think it fits in grand opera. When Houston brought it back and it seemed to be more grand, they were criticized that it was too grandioso for what Gershwin intended. I think that it fits the progression of the piece. I think it fits in grand opera, but it also is, it's the folk opera. It is a folk opera. It's full of folk melodies, so you need the folk in it. But it's grand opera, yet it's New York, yet it's, you know, it's all of that married together. You know, that was my time.
I'm a graduate of the School of Music. I'm an ethnomusicologist, and I spoke at the keynote. You just made a great segue into the question. My name is Kira Gaunt, and about the folk opera. So I'm sure you've done productions everywhere, different kinds of interpretations, different kinds of direction. What have you brought, if the few of you could talk about what things from home culture, from Black culture, from your background, have you brought to aspects or scenes that you think, you know, if it weren't Black people doing it, you know, given the Budapest, you know, what would be missing, or what do you bring, or?
Well, for myself, I know as I said earlier, I have a love-hate with Serena because I'm nothing like Serena. I'm not super religious. I'm not, you know, uber, you know, all these things. And I'm kind of sort of between Bess and Clara, you know. Karen is. But, so I struggled in the beginning. But I just play my aunt or people that I grew up with in the church. You know, my friends who, you know, grew up in the church. 'Cause I didn't grow up in the church, but my culture is in me. It's my DNA. It's through me. So I don't have to pretend in that way. You know what I mean? But I always find that that's the beauty about Porgy and Bess. It's like no one has to tell you. All you have to do is tell me where you want me to be to find the light. Everything else, I got it. You know, and I think that that is the reason why it doesn't really work when you don't have a black cast. Oftentimes I think, well, maybe would it work if this was like Brazil, in like the ghetto in Brazil, you know what I mean? Or if we took it out of the context and put it in like Latin. I've thought about it. And I said, well, because the conversation of Hungry doing Porgy and Bess and how, you know, every time the copyright comes up, you know, it's like, you know, people want to do it, or my white colleagues want to, you know, I'm dying to sing Porgy and Bess. I'm like, okay, well, give me one of your trovadores, and you can sing Serena. How about that? And it's like, you know, the back stands up like, hell no, you know what I mean? Like, and everybody wants to sing, and you can sing it. You can do the suite. I did the suite in Norway, and the entire, you know, chorus was white. We did it in Sydney last year. We did semi-stage version. But the sound is not right. It's not what I'm used to. It's a certain color that needs to be there. So, I mean, as far as your question, yes. I mean, it is, you know, it's a gift that Gershwin gave us. You know, and I'm just fortunate to be in that wave of generation. You know, it's just my time, so.
I think Daniel wants to, pass the mic down.
So the other thing is, often you get a director, and most of the productions I've been in have been in Europe. So often you get a director who thinks that they're going to answer all the questions or educate African Americans about being African American. And one very famous director said that all black people are incredibly poor, and isn't it sad that Porgy and Bess is about a really poor group of black people? So we had to educate him that, you know, black people aren't poor in that sense, and that they don't all have disease, and they don't all have scurvy, and they aren't all losing their teeth. So it is something that it's a way to educate a lot of different people. One of the directors I worked with, who was also very famous, was German, and his idea of what being black was totally off base. He happened to be a pretty powerful man. He was Gert Friedrich, who was the director in Berlin. And so we had a lot of fights with him about what he wanted to do with the production. And the production ended up being fairly odd. But we had that discussion, and so his idea of what being black was obviously wasn't ours. So we taught him, and he learned grudgingly, but he learned. And then the last production I was in Paris, and the director was South African, and the set we had was, and those of you who were here earlier heard this, the set we had was white. 4 white walls, or 3 white walls, a long white table, longer than these 2 tables together, and a bunch of white chairs. That was it. And she used a lot of video and a lot of in-scene video. There were some videos of Bess taking drugs and that kind of thing. But yeah, but the background of the scenes were not scenes from Charleston, South Carolina. They were scenes from Pretoria or Johannesburg. So it was very interesting. So again, we had to talk about, well, this isn't really what we're about, but we ended up having to do it in a way that kind of fit into what they wanted, because they're in charge, and in the final analysis we have to do what they wanted to do, what they want us to do. But as in any stage production, even if it's, you know, if it's Flying Dutchman, you do what the director wants in the final analysis. You push and fight as much as you can, and then you give in. But we couldn't fight against what she did with the set, but we could be real Black Americans, and that's what always carries this piece, and that's what always will carry it.
So on the paper, you have black dots on the white page, right? And then you have people like us. I don't think Porgy and Bess works with just the dots on the page being as they are. Like he said, you have to bring that culture to it. So I'm from Georgia. My dad's preacher, my granddad's preacher. I grew up in church playing the drums. So when it gets to some of these preaching scenes that Porgy does, I get it, you know, so I'm bringing that to the table. I don't know if anyone that grew up in Hungary or South Africa will get that, you know? So although they can sing the notes, there's a certain amount of je ne sais quoi that, you know, we bring to the table, and I think that's important. So that's it, just that swag, that cultural authenticity that we all generally possess is in us because it's our culture. My man from Texas, he from Georgia, you know, I'm from Georgia, he from Alabama, you know, now I'm talking like I'm from those places, but you know, he's from South Carolina, you know, it's just, that's what we do. I was in Charleston like a month ago, and I was in the Charleston church in Moncks Corner, and when things start happening there, the spirit gets up. You know, in Georgia, we clap on 2 and 4. In South Carolina, he'll verify this, never even talked over with him. They get this dun, bun, 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 bun. And if you think about, oh Lord, I'm on my way, it's the same thing. So I heard that long before I thought about Porgy. So it just comes out. So that's the type of stuff we bring to the table. Am I right about that, though? See, I told you. Okay.
Janai, you keep shaking your head. You want to jump in? No. Let's get your voice.
Oh yeah, it's Janai. It's okay. My book. I mean, yes, I grew up in church. You know, I grew up in a interesting household. My mother is from a Pentecostal church. My dad was Catholic, so I went to both and appreciate both. But yes, before I even could sing Porgy and Bess, I was listening to it since a child, and it just felt like I was in church. You know, I was like, oh yeah, you know, the music's just naturally in you, in my body. The prayer scenes when they gather and pray, it's like being at my grandma's house, you know, praying before we eat on Thanksgiving. That's what they do. They stand around the table, and my grandmother leads, and that's still to this day exactly how it is. So it just felt natural in a way. Like I didn't feel like I was playing a character. I don't feel like I'm playing Clara. I feel like I'm Janai walking on stage with my friends, and we're at my grandma's house, or we're going to church together. It just seems so authentic and organic and natural, which is amazing because I have not experienced that with any of the other amazing roles that I've been fortunate to do. So for this being my first time, and it's not even really staged, I'm excited, you know, I'm truly excited. It's like a big concert with just at home, you know, and I'm honored and thrilled. Some of these people I've heard of and known for years, but I'm meeting for the first time, and it was like immediate connection. It was like I've known them for years. It's just the music has just brought us all together, and it's something that my soul needed. So I'm so grateful to be doing this, especially with this cast, and I can't wait to my first fully staged version of it. So.
Janai, thank
Hi, I have some questions that are going to address a lot of what you've all been talking about. I'm really excited to be here, to be able to see the production tomorrow night. There's an amazing set of circumstances as to why I'm here. I'm not going to go into all that, but I've been talking, just having side conversations with Dr. Getman and with the moderator and the keynote speaker. And you know, I'm a Jewish white guy. I was born in Chester, Pennsylvania. I now live outside of Trenton, near Princeton. And when my brother my older brother was a graduate of Chester High School, as was I. We both played clarinet. My brother was the second clarinetist. I mean, there's all these connections we all have in one way or another, and it's uncanny how things come together. So my brother was not the first clarinetist because a woman named Clamma Dale was the first clarinetist. And as we all do now, we look things up on Wikipedia, like just to refresh my memory about Porgy and Bess. And lo and behold, I come across Clamma Dale was in the Houston production. Okay, so there's all these connections. Anyway, so to fast forward, I live outside of, like I said, I live near Trenton. I recently joined the board of directors of the Capitol Philharmonic. There's also the Bohème Opera Company. Both are professional art performing groups that are struggling. We are tearing our hair out. I'm on the board of directors of the Philharmonic. I have close friends who run the Bohème Opera Company. I saw last year they performed Lucia di Lammermoor, Carmen. In the past, they've just, okay. So I want to just invite all of you, perhaps to talk to me when you get a chance, reach out to the Capitol Philharmonic, the Bohem Opera Company. They're always looking for performers. We want to increase the audience of both groups to help revitalize Trenton, which one of the pillars of doing that is through the arts. And please, if you have a chance, speak to me. If you have cards, I will push like anything to have you guys. I mean, I'm sitting here. I want Porgy and Bess to be performed in Trenton, and all those other performances. Come and do that one, and do all those other classical performances, please.
I want to say something when you said you're a Jewish man. There's a couple of parts in the orchestra. I was listening to it with some friends one time. We were doing, having a good time, some drinks, yeah. We're musicians, that's what we do. We sit around and listen to music. And we were listening and I was like, oh, that's so black. A couple of the runs, it's like, it's so black. And he turns to me and goes, that's so Jewish. And it's neat to me that you hear these little things. Again, Gershwin, Jewish man. It's like, it's a beautiful thing to me how in music, even with slavery, black people identified with the story of the children of the Israelites, that being in bondage, and how the Jewish people and black people do this throughout history. And it always comes into a very central commonality. We feel that, I feel that in this piece, that the first time I really heard Porgy and Bess, as a Southern black boy, it was naturally my experience. Hearing everything about it, it's like, that's my experience. And it's neat to me that some of my Jewish friends can hear a certain part of the orchestration and say that's my experience as well. So obviously a Jewish man touched this and put it in there. It's a neat thing to me, again, that this piece will live on, but that people try to put divides and divisity about it and all, but I think it's really neat sometimes if we go back and find all the little pieces of the Webern, the school of the Viennese school in the piece. Find all these pieces about this piece that people don't just assume that it's because of an American opera that it's trivial or it should be just thrown together, because it shouldn't be. That I am very grateful for this edition, that you brought out a couple of things that, again, with some of the pieces that are cut, parts that are cut, because they are difficult to put together. But they need to be there because it is part of the drama. It is a part of the complete story of the piece. So thank you.
We have time, perhaps, for, I think, one more question, although, is there? Yeah. Oh, sorry, I did promise.
Hi, I'm very starstruck because I have been pelting you all with emails. My name is Kelly Bixby, and I have, this is a very shameless plug. I have a paper that highlights some of the voices of these people, again, tomorrow, in addition to some other voices from a previous generation and from a newer generation. So I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing this experience with us, because after spending the last 3 months hearing these stories, my life has changed a lot, and what I want to do with my life has changed a lot. And I wonder if you can speak a little bit. I know we're kind of past the point here. My most favorite thing that I heard people talk about was how coming to the cast was coming home, and you've already mentioned that. And I just want to hear, maybe from Rehanna, who I'm going to put on the spot, what's it like, and even Janai and Talise to some extent, what's it like walking into a room and giving your artistic best home?
Actually, if I could jump in and have one more question and then have the 2 questions circulate, but keep that in mind.
If I could just shift the emphasis for a moment. I'm an individual that has never seen Porgy and Bess. I've certainly heard snippets of the music, but I've never seen a full production. Can you hear me? No. Okay, I'm sorry. And I'm immensely impressed with everything that I heard here today and the struggles that you've endured through your professional careers. What I want to speak about, just very briefly, is I'm going to be a member of the audience. what do you anticipate or what do you want from me as a member of the audience, and what can you tell me that will enhance your performance and in my appreciation of what you're going to perform?
So the two questions, coming home and information for the audience.
Well, for me, it was so easy to feel at home with this cast. Like the first time meeting Reggie, he gave me this giant hug that immediately felt like family. And I'd only known him for maybe 20 seconds. And this entire group, well, sir, no, but this entire group shows nothing but love and like compassion. And I've been a part of groups before where there's an immediate kinship, but this is the first time where there's like an immediate bond of family and love. And you're gonna see that on stage too, because that's what they bring. They bring that love, that compassion, all of that. Everything you feel like when you go home, that's what you see on this stage. So that's what I would like for you to take from this. I want you to see this love and this blossoming community giving nothing but love and appreciation to everybody.
Norman, did you want to jump in? Okay, anyone else want to? Oh, good.
I will sort of touch on both questions in one, try not to ramble statement. For me, what it means to come to this stage.
That was the issue.
I didn't expect that. It is an understanding of what we have gone through to, thank you. I have mascara on, so it's okay. It's an understanding, immediate understanding of what we've gone through to be here. And the excellence that is on this stage. And it's a celebration when we sing together. I mean, we sit there in awe watching each other sing our bits, and we're just like, can you teach me how to do that? I mean, and it is the most sincere expression of love and support. We spend 85% of our time alone and in a practice room. And for the 3 hours that you all get to see and enjoy, know that that's like 2% of what we go through to be there at that moment. And sorry. And I was thinking about this summer when we were all together, and my son, who has spent his entire life either riding his tricycle or, spending time in my dressing room in a playpen or whatever, came up this summer and spent time with us in Cooperstown. And I remember we were all sitting sort of on the back porches at a break, and he said, I don't know if you remember, but he said, "Wait a minute. Are you all in the same opera?" He's like, "You're all in the opera together. Like, you're all in the opera together?" And I couldn't decide if I was elated that he understood the greatness of that moment of all of us together, or if I was frustrated that here is a young man who I am, championing to be a supporter of the arts. I've long given up on the musician, so I just wanted to go make some money and give it back to us. But that he was baffled to see so many of us together, and he was actually heartbroken to leave and to go home when he had to go back to school or whatever. And to the point now that, like, whenever we're our friends, we still keep up with one another. We're in town, we see each other. He's like, "Well, can I come? Is Norman there?" And I mean, Norman would kidnap my child, and I'd be like, "Are you gonna feed him?" And they would go off to play basketball. I mean, we are truly a family, and no matter how widespread we are, there is a common understanding, no matter what corner of America you live in, or Europe, or wherever. When we step on this stage, it's not lost on any of us how fortunate we are, particularly in the month of February, of how we got here. And even in 2018, what responsibility we carry going forward. Which is why I made the statement earlier that I choose my productions and who I'm with, because I feel it's our responsibility to make sure that this opera goes on with the most dignity, at the highest integrity, and that it is always respected, and that people understand what we give to be in this score, to do the score in full. I mean, we are exhausted when we go home. I mean, we walk out of the rehearsal and we're like, I'm just gonna get something to eat. And everybody goes back to their hotel room because you're just like, because it's such an expression of who we are. It's not just vocally challenging, just the emotion that it takes, and also to put out our innermost selves on stage and portray that and hope that you see that it's not a parody. It's not something that's tacky or cheap. It's not racist. It's who we are. It's our history from whatever corner you come from. It's what has afforded us to be where we are today. And it's an honor to be here with all of you guys. I didn't expect to get teary, but there you go. So.
Let's say real quick, also too, you get to see this community that's again, it's a black community, but it's a community. I often think from start to finish, there's a baby, there's an old man, there's a hurricane, there's 2 or 3 deaths. Yeah. So you get to see this, and there's a picnic, the joyous time of the year. So you get to see this community actually live. From the youngest to the oldest. There's Jake, who's an entrepreneur. There's Sporting Life, who's an entrepreneur. So it's different facets of living. It's literally different facets of living. So you get to see this community like any community, whether it be in wherever, but you get to see this community live so truly in their struggles, in their celebrations, full out on stage in their community.
I want to thank you so much for inviting us into the community, for being real. I want to thank the audience for joining the community. What an incredible conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for being here this afternoon. This has been really, really wonderful.